Hello there, and a very warm welcome to you. Wherever you are in the world, and whatever time it might be it a quiet, thoughtful evening, a restless and lonely midnight, or the soft, gray light of an early dawn, I am so very glad that you are here with us tonight. I often find myself wondering where our stories travel to, which corners of the globe they reach. So, if you ever feel inclined, I would be happy to know where you're watching from. Now, find a comfortable position. Let your shoulders relax. Take a slow, deep breath. Close your eyes if you wish, and let us begin our journey. Not to a battlefield or a hero's feast, but to a silent, ancient chamber at the heart of a kingdom that time itself has all but forgotten. The day for a being such as a demon king does not begin with the gentle persuasion of a sunrise. There is no sun here. There are no birds to sing. No golden light to spill across the floorboards. The concept of morning is an academic one, a foreign custom from a brighter, more fleeting world. For him, the day begins with a stirring. It is a slow, silent, and immensely heavy return to consciousness, like a great leviathan surfacing from the unplumbed depths of a black, still ocean. It starts with the eyes. They open not with a flutter, but with a deliberate, geologic slowness. They are eyes of polished volcanic obsidian, deep and black and fathomless, reflecting no light, for there is none to reflect. These are eyes that have witnessed the birth of stars, watching them coalesce from swirling nebulae of cosmic dust. They have watched those same stars burn for eons, swelling into red giants, before collapsing into the quiet, dense dignity of a white dwarf. They have seen civilizations rise on 1,000 worlds, their empires of stone and hope turning to dust, their greatest achievements forgotten footnotes in a history that only he remembers. To look into these eyes is to look into the abyss of time itself. And the first thing one notices is not malice, not rage, but a profound and immeasurable weariness. The first sensation upon waking is not one of an alert, rested mind ready to seize the day. It is weight, an immense, crushing, and utterly familiar weight. It is the gravity of his own being, the accumulated mass of a spirit that has existed for countless millennia. Every memory, every decision, every life he has outlasted has added another infinitesimal layer to his soul. And after eons, the sheer density of it has become a physical presence. It is a weight that presses down on his limbs, a burden that even his immeasurable strength can only just bear. It is the simple, heavy, and unending reality of being himself. As his ancient mind slowly reassembles itself, he takes stock of his surroundings. The chamber of slumber is not the opulent, jewel-encrusted boudoir one might imagine. Opulence is for the newly powerful, for those who still need to broadcast their status. His power is as old and as self-evident as the stone around him, and it has no need for decoration. The chamber is vast, stark, and utterly silent. The walls are made of cooled, polished magma, a deep, featureless black that seems to drink what little ambient gloom exists in the room. They are smooth to the touch and cold, always cold. The architecture is cyclopean, built on a scale that dwarfs any mortal comprehension, designed not for comfort, but for permanence. In the center of this immense space rests the bed. It is not a bed of silks or downy furs. It is a simple, massive, rectangular slab of pure, unadorned obsidian, polished to a mirror-like finish over thousands of years by the simple act of him resting upon it. There are no pillows, no blankets. He does not feel the cold, and he has no need of comfort. The slab is merely a place to cease, a mooring post in the endless ocean of time. The air in the chamber is perfectly still. It is cold, with a deep subterranean chill that has nothing to do with weather, and everything to do with the sheer mass of the rock above and below. It carries the faint, clean, almost sterile scent of cooled stone and ancient, undisturbed dust. It is the smell of a place that has been sealed away from the universe for eons, a place where nothing ever changes. There is only one sound, and it is a sound one feels more than hears. It is a faint, deep, subsonic hum, a vibration that resonates up from the floor and into his bones. It is the sound of the fortress's deep geothermal heart, the great, slow pulse of the slumbering volcano upon which his entire kingdom is built. It is the only heartbeat this chamber has ever known, a steady, eternal rhythm that is the only companion to his solitude. And as his consciousness fully returns, as he sits up on the edge of the great obsidian slab, his first thought is not one of conquest. It is not a grand villainous monologue about his plans to shroud the mortal realms in eternal darkness. Such ambitions are for younger, more energetic demons. His first thought is far more mundane. It is, in essence, a mental to-do list. The day's schedule has already arranged itself in his ancient mind with the quiet, practiced efficiency of a seasoned administrator. There is the morning's petition session with the territorial governors of the ash wastes. There is the weekly soul flow report from the Seventh Circle to review and sign. There is the scrying session to check on the slow geological progress of the encroaching entropy in the blighted lands. And, of course, there is the matter of the long-standing border dispute with the Drow matriarchs over the mining rights to the Whispering Chasm. He sighs, a sound that is not a sound at all, but a faint, internal shifting of his immense psychic weight. This is the true nature of his power. It is not the thrill of battle or the roar of adoring legions. It is the quiet, unending, and deeply wearying responsibility of management. He is not a conqueror anymore. He is a king, an administrator, a CEO of damnation. And the paperwork, both literal and metaphorical, is endless. His throne is not just a seat of power, it is an office desk. And the day, another identical entry in the great, dusty ledger of his eternal life, has just begun. He rises from the slab, the immense weight of his own being settling around his shoulders like a familiar heavy cloak, and prepares to face the profound, soul-crushing mundanity of absolute power. The day ahead will not be one of fire and brimstone. It will be one of meetings, reports, and quiet, lonely decisions. And it will be exactly the same as yesterday, and exactly the same as tomorrow. As he stands, a silent, colossal figure in the center of the vast black chamber, a change occurs in the very fabric of the room. From the deepest, most absolute shadows, where the corners of the chamber meet in a confluence of pure nothingness, figures begin to coalesce. They do not march out or scurry forth. They simply resolve, emerging from the gloom as if they were always there, merely waiting for the proper level of attention to be paid to them. These are his attendants, the silent valets of his ancient court. They are not the snarling, brutish demons one might expect. Such creatures are useful on the battlefield, but their chaotic energy is entirely unsuited for the delicate, precise rituals of the Demon King's mourning. No, these are smaller beings. Some are tiny, wizened imps, their faces pinched with a look of perpetual, terrified concentration, their movements quick, bird-like, and utterly silent. Others are more spectral, wraith-like figures of smoke and shadow, their forms indistinct and wavering, their hands long, slender wisps of darkness. They move with a practiced, silent grace, a choreography of servitude that has been perfected over countless centuries. There is no communication between them, no spoken orders from him. Every movement is known, every action predetermined. They are less like servants and more like the disembodied components of a single complex machine. A machine whose only purpose is the ritual of arming their lord. And so the ritual begins. It is a slow, meditative, and deeply solemn process, more akin to a sacred rite than to the simple act of getting dressed. Each piece of his regalia is brought forth from alcoves hidden in the black walls, presented with a reverence that borders on terror. This is not armor for battle. He has not faced a worthy physical opponent in 10 millennia. This is the regalia of dread, the ceremonial vestments of his absolute authority. It is a uniform, and its primary purpose is to project an aura of such immense, ancient, and unassailable power that the very thought of opposition withers and dies before it can even form. The first pieces brought forth are the robes. They are impossibly heavy, woven not from silk or wool, but from pure, solidified shadow stuff. They shimmer with a strange anti-light, absorbing the ambient gloom and making the space around them seem even darker. The attendants, working in perfect unison, lift the great heavy mantle. The only sound is the soft, dry whisper of the fabric as it moves through the still air, a sound like autumn leaves skittering across ancient gravestones. They drape it over his colossal shoulders. The weight is immense, a physical burden that would crush any lesser being, but he accepts it without a flinch. It settles upon him like a shroud of night, its cold, heavy fabric a familiar and constant presence. Next come the plates of his ceremonial armor. This is not the scarred, battered steel of a warrior. This is something far older, far more potent. It is armor forged not in fire, but in the compressed essence of 1,000,000 captured screams, tempered not in water, but in the collected tears of forgotten gods. Its surface is a deep, burnished black, seeming to swallow the very space around it. The attendants bring forth the pieces one by one, the greaves, the vambraces, the gorget. Each piece is laid upon him with painstaking care. The only sounds are the soft, metallic scrapes as the soul-forged plates are fitted together, a sound like a key turning in a lock that has not been opened for an age. The metal is cold to the touch, a cold that seems to leach the warmth from the very air. This is not armor designed to protect his body from a physical blow. It is designed to contain him, to shield the universe from the raw, unadulterated power that radiates from his ancient form. It is a cage of his own authority, a necessary prison he must don each and every day to keep his own immense being from unraveling the fabric of reality around him. He feels the familiar constraints as the final buckles are latched, the comforting pressure of his own contained power. The weight of it all is staggering. It is the weight of a dying star, the weight of 1,000,000 broken oaths, the weight of eons of solitary rule. He stands there, a great, silent black monolith, a living monument to a power so absolute it has become a burden. And then the final piece is brought forth. It is carried by the oldest and most senior of the imps on a simple, unadorned obsidian platter. It is his crown. It is not a thing of gold or jewels. It is not a glorious, shining halo. It is a simple, brutal circlet of twisted, blackened iron, cold and severe. It looks less like a crown and more like a shackle. The old imp approaches, his hands trembling slightly, the only break in the morning's otherwise flawless choreography. He holds the platter up, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. The Demon King inclines his head, a gesture so slight it is almost imperceptible, and the imp, with a movement of infinite care, lifts the iron circlet and places it upon his brow. The moment the cold iron makes contact with his skin, a new sensation floods his ancient consciousness. It is a low, constant, prasic hum, a sound that is not a sound, but a feeling. It is the collective, unending whisper of his entire domain. The crown is not a symbol of glory. It is a psychic amplifier, a focus for the immense, unwanted energies of his kingdom. Through it, he can feel the desperate pleas of 1,000,000,000 tormented souls, the muttered curses of his underlings, the grinding, tectonic friction of his realm's complex political landscape, the slow, steady hum of the soul forges, and the distant, chaotic static of the mortal worlds. It is 1,000,000 voices whispering at once, a cacophony of fear, ambition, pain, desire. To any other being, this sensory overload would be instantly maddening, a tsunami of psychic noise that would shatter the mind into 1,000,000 pieces. But for him, it is merely background noise. He has borne this crown and the psychic weight it carries for so long that he has learned to filter it, to push it to the back of his mind. It is a constant companion, a dull, unending headache that he has had for so long he can no longer remember what silence truly feels like. It is the price of omniscience, the eternal burden of a king who knows everything, hears everything, and feels everything within his vast and terrible kingdom. The ritual is complete. He stands fully attired, a figure of immense, silent, and weary dread. The attendants, their duty fulfilled, silently dissolve back into the shadows from whence they came, leaving him once more in absolute solitude. He is no longer just a being. He is an institution, an icon, a living embodiment of absolute, eternal, and soul-crushingly tedious power. He is the Demon King, and now his workday can truly begin.
The ritual of arming complete, he turns and begins a slow, deliberate walk from the chamber of slumber. His movements are measured, the immense weight of his regalia forcing a slow, ponderous gait. He is not walking to a war room or a grand audience hall. He is going to breakfast. He passes through a series of vast, silent corridors, his footsteps making no sound on the polished obsidian floors. The architecture itself seems to conspire to create a perfect, oppressive silence. He arrives at the entrance to the great dining hall. Two immense doors of solid, unadorned basalt that swing open silently at his approach, moved by some unseen, ancient mechanism. The hall beyond is a breathtaking testament to scale and emptiness. It is a vast, cavernous space, so large that the far wall is lost in a hazy, indistinct gloom. The ceiling is so high that it is not a ceiling at all, but a patch of captured, unmoving night sky, swirling with faint, distant, dead nebulae. The air is cold and still, carrying the same ancient scent of stone and dust. In the precise center of this cavernous hall sits a single, colossal table. It is not made of wood or metal. It is a single, perfectly smooth, perfectly level slab of volcanic basalt, 100 feet long and 20 feet wide, polished to a dark, matte finish. It is a feature of the landscape more than a piece of furniture. And at the far end of this immense empty table, a single place has been set for him. The journey from the door to his seat is a long one, a slow, solitary march across a sea of polished stone. He sits, the ancient rock of his chair groaning faintly, not under his weight, but under the sheer presence of his being. He sits there, a lone, dark figure at the head of a table built for 1,000, a king in an empty court, utterly and profoundly isolated. Before him, the meal has already been laid out by the same silent, spectral attendants who have now vanished, their task complete. This is not the grotesque feast of souls and tormented flesh that mortal tales might imagine. Such things are for crude, unsophisticated fiends. His sustenance is something far older, far stranger, and infinitely more melancholic.
Today's meal consists of 2 items. The first is a single small piece of fruit, resting in the center of a simple black obsidian plate. The fruit is the size of a human heart, its skin a deep ashen black, with a dry, cracked texture like parched earth. It is an ash apple, a fruit that grows only in the deepest volcanic chasms of his realm, nourished by pure sulfur and the ancient mineral-rich ash of a world's core. It is a fruit that has never known sunlight, never felt the rain, never been touched by any living thing save the imps who harvest it. The second item is a simple, unadorned goblet, also carved from a single piece of obsidian. It is filled with a liquid that defies easy description. It is not water, not wine. It is a clear, silvery liquid that seems to shimmer with a faint internal light, as if it were a cup of captured liquid starlight. It is a distillation of pure potential, a drink drawn from the very wellspring of creation, and it has no taste at all. He picks up the obsidian fork and knife that have been placed beside his plate. They are heavy, simple, and cold to the touch. With a slow, deliberate movement, he cuts into the ash apple. The tough, dry skin gives way to a flesh that is the color of pale, gray dust. He lifts a small piece to his mouth. The texture is chalky, dry, and it dissolves on the tongue into a fine, flavorless powder. There is no sweetness, no sourness, no pleasure. There is only the sensation of consumption, the mechanical act of providing his ancient form with the unique mineral-based energy it requires. He eats slowly, methodically, a single small piece at a time. This is not a meal to be savored. It is a ritual to be performed, a function to be carried out. It is the cosmic equivalent of a machine taking on fuel. After each bite, he takes a small sip from the goblet. The liquid starlight is cool as it passes his lips, and it leaves behind no sensation, no aftertaste. It is pure, unflavored potential, a drink that both is and is not, and it serves to wash down the dry, ashen fruit. He dines in a silence so profound it has become a physical presence. It is a silence built from 1,000 lesser silences. The silence of the vast empty hall, the silence of the cold still air, the silence of his own solitary heart. The only sound that dares to break this perfect quiet is the faint, almost imperceptible click of his obsidian fork against the obsidian plate. Click. A small, sharp, lonely sound in a universe of silence. Click. It is the sound of his own solitude. Click. Each tiny noise is a reminder of his utter isolation, a punctuation mark in the endless, unwritten book of his loneliness. He is the most powerful being in 1,000 realms, and yet he eats his breakfast in a silence more complete than any mortal tomb. There are no courtiers to flatter him, no jesters to entertain him, no musicians to soothe him. There is no conversation, laughter, no shared warmth. There has not been for 10,000 years.
He has outlasted all of his peers, all of his rivals, all of his friends, if he ever truly had any. He is a singular entity, a mountain peak so high that it exists in a permanent, breathless solitude. And this meal, this solitary repast in this vast empty hall, is the most potent symbol of his eternal state. The meal continues, bite by chalky bite, sip by tasteless. The food provides him not with pleasure, but with sustenance. The ritual provides him not with comfort, and a moment to reflect on the long, wearying day ahead. It is a moment of pure, undiluted being, a quiet interlude between the ritual of arming and the burden of ruling. He finishes the last piece of the ash apple, drains the last of the liquid starlight from his goblet, and places his utensils neatly back on the obsidian plate. The meal is over. He remains seated for a moment, a silent, enthroned figure in a desolate landscape of his own making. The silence rushes back in to fill the void left by the faint clicking of his fork, and the hall is once again returned to its perfect, timeless stillness. He has eaten, he has refueled, he is ready. And now his long, solitary walk to the throne room and to the tedious, unending business of his eternal kingdom awaits. Pushing himself up from the great basalt table, the Demon King turns and begins the next phase of his morning ritual, the procession to the throne. This is not a short walk down a carpeted hallway. It is a long, slow, and solitary journey through the very heart of his ancient fortress. A tour of a place built not for living, but for enduring. The fortress is a monument to a power so old it has become indistinguishable from the geology around it. This is not a hellscape of fire and brimstone, of screaming souls and rivers of molten rock. Such things are crude, messy, and inefficient, the tools of lesser, more theatrical fiends. His kingdom is one of cold, silent, and cyclopean grandeur. It is a place of immense, geometrically perfect structures, of vast, empty spaces, and of a silence so profound that it feels like a physical weight on the soul. He walks through corridors so wide that a mortal army could march through them 10 abreast, under ceilings so high they are lost in an artificial, starless twilight. The walls are not adorned with gold or jewels, but are lined with massive, precisely cut blocks of obsidian, basalt, and other dark volcanic stones. The entire fortress feels less like a building and more like the interior of a single, colossal, perfectly cut gemstone. The first great hall he passes through is the Hall of History. It is a long, cavernous gallery, and hanging from its high, dark walls are a series of immense tapestries. But these are not the boastful, self-aggrandizing banners of mortal kings, depicting glorious victories, vanquished enemies, or royal lineages. The Demon King has no need to remind anyone of his victories. His very existence is proof of them.
These tapestries depict something far grander and far more melancholic. They are woven not from thread, but from some strange ethereal substance that seems to shift and shimmer with a faint, captured light. They are less like images and more like windows into the deep past. The first tapestry he passes through depicts the birth of a nebula. It is a vast, swirling cloud of incandescent gas and cosmic dust, a beautiful, chaotic explosion of creation in a sea of blackness. He remembers watching it, a silent observer from a dimension beyond, feeling the raw, untamed power of a universe being born. The second tapestry shows the slow, patient cooling of a molten world. He sees the crust of the planet hardening, the first oceans forming from the steam of 1 billion volcanoes, a process that took 100 million years, but which, to him, felt like a quiet afternoon. The third and most poignant tapestry hangs in the center of the hall. It depicts the slow, silent extinction of a race of sentient crystals. He sees their beautiful, crystalline cities, great glittering spires that pulsed with a gentle internal light and sang with a music of pure thought. And he sees them slowly fading, their light dimming, their song growing faint, as the entropic forces of the universe slowly, inexorably reclaimed their world. He had known them. He had conversed with them, their thoughts like cool, clear chimes in his own mind. They were ancient, wise, and peaceful. And now they are gone. The only remaining evidence of their entire civilization is this sad, shimmering image hanging on his wall. These tapestries are not trophies. They are reminders. They are a gallery of loss, a collection of cosmic mementos that serve to reinforce the single great, overwhelming truth of his existence. Everything ends. Stars, worlds, civilizations, even gods. Everything turns to dust and memory. Everything, it seems, except for him. He is the curator of a museum of forgotten things, the sole archivist of a history that no one else is left to read. He continues his slow, ponderous walk, his immense armor-clad form the only moving thing in this vast, petrified landscape. The silence of the fortress is its most remarkable feature. His heavy, soul-forged boots make almost no sound on the polished stone floors. A normal footstep would echo for miles in halls of this size, but the architecture here is designed with a malevolent acoustic genius. The precise angles of the walls, the composition of the stone, the very geometry of the space, it all conspires to absorb sound, to deaden it, to smother it at its source. The result is a deep, oppressive quiet that is far more intimidating than any roar or scream. It is a silence that speaks of absolute control, a silence that says, "Here, even the laws of physics obey my will." It is a silence that magnifies his own solitude, turning his lonely walk into a journey through a vacuum. He passes through the chamber of the orrery, where a great silent clockwork model of a dozen galaxies hangs suspended in the air, its crystal spheres and golden arms turning with a slow, hypnotic grace, mimicking the great silent dance of the cosmos. He passes by the sealed entrance to the Library of Sorrows, a repository of every spell that has ever been lost, every piece of knowledge that has ever been forgotten, a place he has not entered in 5,000 years. He walks across the obsidian bridge, a single, impossibly slender arch of polished black stone that spans a chasm of pure, bottomless darkness, a drop so deep that anything falling into it would simply cease to exist. Each step is a journey through time, each hall a reminder of his own immense, static permanence in a universe of fleeting, transient things. He is a part of the fortress, and the fortress is a part of him. They are both ancient, silent, and unimaginably lonely. His procession is not a display of power for others to see. There is no one here to be impressed. It is a private, daily pilgrimage, a ritual of reinforcement. It is a walk that reminds him of what he is, not a creature of passion or ambition, but a fundamental force of the universe, as cold, as permanent, and as unchanging as the stone around him. He is a geological feature, a law of nature, a being who has transcended the messy, chaotic business of living and has become something else entirely. He is a constant. As he finally approaches the great twin doors of the throne room, he feels nothing. No anticipation, no dread, no excitement. He has made this walk every day. It is simply the next step in the endless, repeating cycle of his existence. He raises a single gauntleted hand, and the great doors, each one 100 feet high and carved from a single piece of meteoric iron, swing open without a sound, revealing the vast, silent, and empty chamber where he will spend the next several hours presiding over the slow, tedious, and utterly necessary bureaucracy of his eternal kingdom. The procession is over. The workday has begun. The great iron doors swing shut behind him, the silence of the fortress sealing him inside the throne room. This chamber is the nexus of his power, the epicenter from which his will radiates out across 1,000 dimensions. And yet, like the rest of his domain, it is a place of cold, stark, and overwhelming grandeur. The room is a perfect, natural cavern, a vast, hemispherical dome, so large that a small city could be built within it. The walls are of a dark, crystalline rock that glitters with faint, captured starlight. At the very apex of the dome, a single, massive, flawed diamond is embedded in the rock, pulsing with a cold, white, internal light that serves as the room's only illumination. In the precise center of this immense space, on a raised dais of polished basalt, sits the throne. It is not a throne of skulls or writhing souls. It is a simple, severe, and imposing seat, carved from the same black obsidian as his bed, its back rising to a sharp, menacing point. This is the seat of power, and it is from here that he will now conduct the morning's business. He ascends the few shallow steps to the dais and settles onto the throne. The cold, hard stone is familiar against his armored back. He sits, a silent, monolithic figure, and he waits. The court that assembles before him is not the chaotic, snarling throng of demons that mortal artists love to depict. Such disorganized rabble would be an offense to his sense of order. His court is small, quiet, and ruthlessly efficient. There are perhaps 24 figures in the vast empty space before him. They are the governors of his various provinces, the lords of his subject realms, the high-ranking administrators of his infernal bureaucracy. They stand in a single, neat, well-organized queue, each one waiting patiently for their turn to approach the throne. There is no jostling for position, no whispered plotting. There is only a respectful, terrified silence. The first petitioner steps forward. He is a duke of the ash wastes, a tall, gaunt creature whose skin is the color of cooling embers and whose eyes glow with a dull orange light. He approaches the dais, bows so low that his horned head nearly touches the floor, and he begins to speak, his voice a dry, rasping whisper that is nonetheless perfectly audible in the supernaturally quiet room. And his petition, the first great matter of state for the day, is not a request for legions to march or cities to burn. It is a border dispute. He launches into a long, dry, and mind-numbingly detailed account of a disagreement with the neighboring barony of the slag pits over the territorial rights to a particularly rich sulfur field. He presents maps drawn on cured human skin, quotes from ancient treaties scribbled on scrolls of lead, and cites precedents going back 5,000 years. It is a presentation that would put a mortal tax lawyer to sleep, a masterpiece of bureaucratic minutiae. The Demon King listens. He does not interrupt. His obsidian eyes are fixed on the Duke, his expression utterly unreadable, a perfect mask of cold, regal neutrality. He absorbs the information, his ancient mind processing the tangled web of claims and counterclaims with the effortless speed of a supercomputer. When the Duke has finally finished his long, rambling presentation, a profound silence falls over the hall. The Demon King does not move for a long moment. Then he speaks, his voice not a roar, but a low, quiet rumble, like the grinding of tectonic plates deep beneath the earth. His ruling is simple, direct, and final. He grants the disputed sulfur field to the barony of the slag pits, but awards the Duke of the Ash Wastes exclusive mining rights for the next 500 years, with a 10% tithe of the raw sulfur to be paid directly to the barony. It is a simple, elegant compromise, a piece of quiet, decisive, and deeply boring administrative action. The Duke bows again, his face a mixture of disappointment and relief, and he retreats back into the queue. The matter is closed. The next petitioner steps forward. This one is a prelate of the 7th Circle, a being wrapped in shadows, whose form seems to waver and shift as if seen through heat haze. His petition is not about conquest or eternal damnation. It is a formal complaint about bureaucratic inefficiency. He reports, in a voice that sounds like dry, rustling paper, that the soul counting process has fallen behind schedule. The new intake of souls from a recently fallen mortal kingdom is overwhelming the existing infrastructure, leading to unacceptable backlogs and statistical discrepancies in the weekly damnation reports. He requests a formal review of the process and an allocation of 300 additional Soul Abacus technicians to clear the backlog. The Demon King listens to this litany of logistical problems with the same placid, unwavering attention. This is his world, not the grand cosmic struggle between good and evil, but the day-to-day grind of managing the infinite, complex, and deeply tedious business of the afterlife. He considers the prelate's request for a moment, and then, with another low, rumbling sentence, he denies the request for more technicians. Instead, he authorizes the implementation of a new, more efficient soul-sorting rune he himself designed several centuries ago, but had not yet bothered to roll out. He instructs the prelate to submit a full implementation plan and budget proposal by the end of the next cycle. The prelate bows, his shadowy form seeming to shrink slightly, and he too retreats. One by one, they come forward, an endless parade of cosmic-level middle managers with their mundane, terrestrial problems. A lord of the forges requests a new shipment of captured screams to be used as a tempering agent for a new line of ceremonial pitchforks. A high-ranking imp from the Ministry of Minor Vexations submits a proposal for a new type of curse that causes eternal, incurable hiccups. A grotesque, bloated creature who governs the Swamp of Sorrows complains that the rising acidity of the swamp is corroding the foundations of a new torment spire and requests more building materials. For hours, he sits there, a silent, unmoving figure on his obsidian throne, listening, processing, and ruling. He is not a tyrant who rules through fear and rage. He is an administrator. His power is not in the strength of his armies, but in his complete and total mastery of the system. He is the ultimate project manager, the eternal CEO, the chairman of a board that has not changed in millennia. This is the true face of evil, he has learned. It is not the chaotic, passionate, screaming madness that mortals imagine. It is the cold, quiet, and ruthlessly efficient application of logic and order to the business of suffering. It is a perfectly balanced budget, a smoothly running supply chain, and a meticulously organized spreadsheet of damnation. The morning wears on, a slow procession of problems and solutions, a testament to the fact that even in the deepest, darkest realms of existence, someone still has to take care of the paperwork. When the last of the petitioners has retreated back into the respectful silence of the queue, there is a brief pause in the morning's proceedings. The vast, silent throne room seems to hold its breath. Then, a new figure detaches itself from the shadows near the base of the dais. This is not a powerful duke or a high-ranking prelate. This is Ignatius, the royal actuary, the chief accountant of the entire infernal realm. Ignatius is a small, wizened imp, ancient even by the standards of his long-lived race. He is hunched and frail, his skin the color and texture of old dried parchment. He wears a pair of thick, multifaceted spectacles, crafted from polished slivers of captured lightning, which magnify his small red eyes to a comical degree. He walks with a slow, shuffling gait, his entire being exuding an air of meticulous, scholarly anxiety. And in his arms, he carries his instrument of office, the Great Ledger. The Ledger is a truly monstrous book, as large as a mortal tombstone and thick as a dwarf's shield. It is bound in a pale, leathery material stretched tight over boards of petrified wood. Human skin, perhaps, or the cured hide of some other equally unfortunate creature. The detail is grim, but it is presented with a complete and total lack of ceremony. It is not a trophy. It is simply the most durable and readily available binding material in the kingdom. The corners of the book are capped with tarnished, blackened iron, and a heavy, rusty lock keeps its secrets secure. Ignatius struggles under the immense weight of the book, his thin arms trembling with the effort. He ascends the steps of the dais, his breath coming in short, wheezing gasps, and with a final mighty heave, he places the Great Ledger upon a small obsidian lectern that stands beside the throne. He fumbles with a large iron key, unlocks the heavy clasp, and with a soft groan of ancient leather, the book is opened. The Demon King, who has been watching this entire process with a placid, unreadable expression, leans forward slightly. His attention is now fully focused on the book. This is, in many ways, the most important part of his morning. This is the review of the soul accounts. Ignatius, his hands shaking slightly, begins his weekly report. He does not speak of fire or suffering. He speaks in the dry, precise, and deeply boring language of numbers. "My lord," he begins, his voice a high-pitched, reedy squeak. "For the fiscal cycle ending this day, the net influx of condemned souls stands at 7,342,601. This represents a 0.2% increase on the previous cycle, largely due to the successful conclusion of the Plague Initiative in the northern mortal kingdoms." He continues, his gnarled finger tracing a line across the page. "The primary sources of intake remain consistent. Greed at 34%, envy at 21%, and wrath at a respectable 17%. Sloth, I regret to report, continues to underperform, holding steady at a mere 4% of total acquisitions." The Demon King listens to this soulless recitation of statistics with the focused intensity of a master financier reviewing a stock portfolio. He is not gloating over the fall of mortals or reveling in their damnation. That is an emotional response, and emotions are inefficient. He is analyzing the data. He is checking quotas, balancing figures, and ensuring that the complex metaphysical economy of his realm remains stable and, ideally, profitable. This is damnation as accounting, evil as a matter of sound fiscal policy. The pages of the Great Ledger are not filled with tormented screams, but with neat, precise columns of figures, inscribed in a spidery, obsessive script, using an ink made from the tears of the regretful. Each soul is a unit, a data point, a number to be processed, allocated, and accounted for. There are charts tracking the relative productivity of sins over the centuries. There are graphs showing the fluctuating market value of a corrupt politician's soul versus that of a fallen priest. It is the most comprehensive and depressing business report in the history of the universe. Ignatius turns a page, the dry parchment making a soft rustling sound. Regarding resource allocation, he continues, the seventh circle, as per your directive, has increased its despair processing efficiency by 6%. However, the increased output has caused a minor bottleneck in the sorrow distribution network, leading to the swamps of eternal melancholy. I have taken the liberty of drafting a proposal to divert a small percentage of the surplus to the forges of regret, where it can be used as a coolant in the production of chains. The Demon King gives a single slow nod of approval. He is not picturing the swamps or the forges. He is picturing a flowchart in his mind, rerouting a metaphysical resource from one column to another to maximize efficiency. He is a systems analyst on a cosmic scale. For what feels like an hour, the report continues. Ignatius details the depreciation of certain torment devices, the rising cost of raw, unprocessed guilt, and the surprisingly robust secondary market for lightly used consciences. It is a litany of logistics, a sermon of spreadsheets. Finally, the old imp closes the massive book. That concludes the weekly summary, my lord, he squeaks, bowing low. The ledger awaits your seal. The Demon King raises a single clawed finger. He leans over the book, his ancient obsidian eyes scanning the final page, a summary of all the gains and losses, the profits and expenditures. His eyes notice a minute error in the calculation, a single misplaced digit in a column of millions, a tiny flaw in the perfect mathematics of damnation. He does not grow angry. He does not chastise the terrified imp. It is a signature that confirms the damnation of millions, that keeps the great dark machine of his kingdom running for another week. And it is given with all the ceremony and passion of a rubber stamp. With his seal affixed, the report is official. Ignatius, looking immensely relieved, closes the great ledger, locks it with the rusty iron key, and, with another great effort, lifts it from the lectern. The books are balanced. He then moves his finger to the bottom of the page, to the space reserved for the final authorization. With a slow, deliberate motion, he signs his name, an ancient, complex rune that sizzles faintly as it burns itself into the page. The act is performed with a profound, almost tangible weariness. It is the gesture of every office worker, in every realm, at the end of a long and tedious day, signing off on one last report before they can finally go home. He does not chastise the terrified imp. He simply reaches out, and with the sharp tip of his claw, he scrapes the incorrect number from the page, the sound a faint, dry scratching. Then he pricks the tip of his own finger. A single, perfect drop of black, viscous blood wells up.
He uses this drop of blood as ink, and with a touch of his claw, he writes the correct number in its place. The correction is made. With the soul accounts balanced and the last of the morning's petitioners dismissed, a rare and precious stillness descends upon the throne room. The great grinding machinery of the kingdom has been tended to, and for a brief, fleeting interlude, the demon king is free from his duties. He rises from his obsidian throne, the movement slow and deliberate, and turns not towards the exit, but towards a small, unmarked door hidden in the dark, crystalline rock behind the dais. The door swings open silently at his approach, revealing a narrow spiral staircase that descends into a quiet, private darkness. He walks down the steps, his armored boots making no sound, and emerges into his personal sanctum, his quiet observatory. This is not a room for war councils or for receiving tribute. This is a place for contemplation, a refuge from the crushing weight of his own eternal administration. The chamber is a perfect sphere, its walls a deep, seamless black that gives the impression of floating in an endless void. There are no windows, no torches. The only light comes from the object that dominates the center of the room, the orrery of worlds. This is not a simple brass model of a solar system. It is a vast, intricate, and living sculpture of magic and captured starlight. It is a spinning, three-dimensional map of dozens of galaxies and their adjacent dimensions, a clockwork masterpiece on a cosmic scale. Tiny, glittering suns of pure, solidified light burn at the hearts of swirling nebulae made of smoke and diamond dust. Miniature worlds of polished agate, lapis lazuli, and jade orbit these suns on impossibly slender threads of silver, each one turning on its own tiny axis. The entire construct moves with a slow, silent, hypnotic grace, a perfect, silent symphony of celestial mechanics. This is his telescope, his scrying pool, his private window onto the vast, chaotic, and endlessly repeating experiment that is the universe. He stands before the great silent machine, a dark, motionless figure in the center of a swirling galaxy of light, and he watches. He is not plotting. He is not looking for worlds to conquer or civilizations to corrupt. His expansionist phase ended millennia ago. Now he simply observes. He raises a single clawed hand, and with a gentle, almost tender gesture, he touches the surface of one of the small spinning spheres. It is a world of blue oceans and green continents, a vibrant, living jewel in the darkness of the void. As his finger makes contact, his consciousness plunges into it, his ancient mind soaring over the surface of the mortal realm he has chosen to watch today. He watches not with malice, not with a conqueror's avarice, but with a kind of detached, melancholic curiosity, the quiet interest of a 10,000-year-old man sitting on a park bench watching children play. He sees a great shining city of white marble, its towers piercing the clouds, a beacon of mortal hope and ambition. He has seen 1,000 such cities. He knows that in a few hundred years, its marble will be cracked and stained, its towers will have crumbled, and its name will be a half-remembered footnote in a dusty scroll. He sees a young king, full of vigor and righteousness, being crowned in a grand cathedral. The king swears an oath to protect his people, to bring justice and prosperity to his land.
the Demon King feels a faint, ghostly echo of something that might have been amusement. He has seen countless such kings. He knows this one will grow old, his righteous fire will cool into the gray ash of compromise. His kingdom will be inherited by a less noble son, and his great oaths will be forgotten, washed away by the relentless tide of time. He shifts his focus and sees a young hero, a farm boy with a noble heart and a destiny whispered on the winds. The boy is pulling a mythical sword from a stone, or being gifted a magical amulet by a wizened old hermit. He is embarking on a great quest to slay a dragon, or to defeat a wicked sorcerer. The Demon King watches this classic, timeless scene play out with a profound sense of déjà vu. He has seen this hero before, in 1,000 different forms, on 1,000 different worlds. He knows how the story ends. The hero will triumph, he will be celebrated, he will marry the princess, he will become a king, and he will grow old and die. His magical sword rusting on a dusty wall, his great deeds fading into legend, then into myth, and then into nothing at all. He watches the small, frantic, and fleeting lives of the mortals as they play out their epic, heartfelt dramas. He sees their wars, their loves, their betrayals, their art, their science, their moments of breathtaking cruelty, and their moments of astonishing, inexplicable kindness. And he feels nothing. Not because he is evil, but because his perspective is too vast. He is a mountain, watching the frantic, short lives of the butterflies at its base. Their struggles are real, their passions are intense, but from his immense geological vantage point, they are so brief, so fleeting, so utterly insignificant in the grand, silent sweep of eternity. This is the ultimate weight of his endless life. It is not just the burden of his crown or the tedium of his duties. It is the weight of time itself. He has lived so long that he has seen every story play out, every pattern repeat itself, every great, unique tragedy become a familiar, recurring theme. There is nothing new under any sun, and he has seen them all. This cosmic perspective has leached the color and drama from the universe, leaving only a quiet, gray, and unending sense of futility. It is the source of his deep and abiding weariness, the reason for the profound loneliness that sits at the core of his being. He is the only one who remembers it all, the sole witness to the great, repeating, and ultimately pointless play of existence. He pulls his consciousness back from the mortal world, his finger lifting from the small, spinning sphere. He stands once more in his silent, dark observatory, the great, silent orrery turning before him. It is a beautiful machine, a perfect representation of a universe that is full of sound and fury, but which, from his vantage point, ultimately signifies nothing. He has had his moment of contemplation, his brief, melancholic diversion. It has not brought him peace or pleasure. It has only served to reinforce the vast, silent, and empty space of his own eternal existence. With a faint, internal sigh that is the sound of a star cooling, he turns away from the glittering, silent dance of the cosmos and walks back towards the spiral staircase, back towards the world of duties and reports, back to the business of being the unmoving, unchanging center of his own small,
dark and deeply, deeply boring universe.
Returning to the cold, silent grandeur of the throne room, the Demon King resumes his seat upon his obsidian throne. The brief, melancholic interlude in the orrery is over, and the day's schedule must continue. The great chamber is no longer empty. While he was away, a new figure has been brought into the center of the room, waiting for his audience. This is not another petitioner with a mundane problem. This is the court seer, the official oracle of the infernal kingdom. The creature that stands before him is ancient and pitiable. One could perhaps call it a fate, one of the three sisters of destiny from a long-dead mythology, captured and chained eons ago. She is a withered, hunched crone, her skin a network of deep, spidery wrinkles, her body wrapped in rags of a dark, indeterminate cloth. Her eyes are gone, the sockets long since healed over with smooth scar tissue. She is blind, but her sightless face is turned towards the throne, as if she can feel his presence as a physical force. Two hulking, brutish guards stand on either side of her, holding the ends of a heavy iron chain that is shackled to her ankles. They are here not to restrain her, for she is frail and weak, but to guide her and to ensure she does not wander. This is the weekly prophecy reading, a ritual as old and as immutable as the soul accounts. It is a part of the ancient pacts that underpin his rule, a necessary and deeply annoying part of the job. He gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a signal to the guards. One of them prods the old crone gently with the butt of his spear, and she shuffles forward, the heavy chain scraping and clinking on the polished obsidian floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence. She stops at the foot of the dais and bows her head. "Speak," the Demon King commands, his voice a low, quiet rumble that carries no emotion, only a sense of profound, weary patience. The old seer takes a deep, rattling breath, and when she speaks, her voice is a dry, whispering hiss, like sand blowing over ancient bones. And the words she speaks are of destiny, of fate, of the great cosmic struggle that mortals find so endlessly fascinating. "I have seen a shadow lift," she whispers. "In the northern lands of the sun-drenched world, a child of light will rise, born under a sign of hope, his coming foretold by the fall of a star." Her voice trails off into a fit of dry, hacking coughs. The Demon King waits, his expression as impassive as a stone carving. He has heard this prophecy before, not these exact words perhaps, but this exact sentiment. He has heard it 1,000 times, in 1,000 different forms, from 1,000 different oracles, over 1,000 different millennia. The child of light, the chosen one, the hero of destiny. It is the universe's favorite story, a timeless classic that it loves to retell with minor variations. He knows the tropes by heart. There will be a humble beginning, a wise old mentor, a magical artifact, a series of trials, and a final dramatic confrontation with the forces of darkness. It is a predictable, formulaic, and, from his perspective, deeply uninteresting narrative. The old seer recovers her breath and continues, her voice gaining a slightly more theatrical sing-song quality. He will gather the scattered shards of a broken sword. He will unite the feuding kingdoms of men, and he will forge an army to march upon the very gates of this fortress, to bring light into the darkness and to challenge the eternal throne. The Demon King listens to this dire pronouncement with the same detached patience he gives to a report on sulfur field mining rights. To him, this is not a terrifying threat to his existence. It is an administrative annoyance. It is another piece of data to be processed, another variable to be entered into the great complex equation of his eternal rule. This child of a light is not a nemesis. He is a recurring logistical problem, like an unusually persistent pest infestation or a seasonal fluctuation in the soul market. He knows from long and weary experience that this prophecy will require a certain amount of resource allocation. He will have to dispatch a minor lord with a small legion to the northern mortal lands to investigate. This will involve scouting reports, risk assessments, and the inevitable requisition forms for more troops and supplies. He will have to review the profiles of several thousand chosen ones to identify the most likely candidate. It is, in essence, a new project, and like all projects, it will generate a significant amount of paperwork. He has a standard operating procedure for dealing with heroes of destiny. He has a flowchart. This is what fate has been reduced to in his ancient bureaucratic kingdom, a predictable, recurring event that can be managed with proper planning and efficient administration. The old seer finishes her prophecy, her body trembling with the effort of channeling the cosmic energies. She stands, silent and panting, awaiting his reaction, perhaps expecting a roar of rage or a display of terrifying power. The Demon King does neither. He simply looks down at the ancient, chained creature, and he feels a faint flicker that might, in a lesser being, be called pity. She is a slave to destiny, a prisoner of the future, forced to endlessly repeat the same tired old story.
To the Demon King, destiny is not a grand, dramatic confrontation. It is not an epic struggle against a worthy foe. It is a recurring meeting in his eternal calendar, one that he cannot cancel, but which he must endure with a quiet, weary resignation. The child of light will rise, and he will be dealt with, just as the 1,000 chosen ones before him were dealt with. And in a few centuries, another oracle will be brought before him, and will speak of another hero, another prophecy, another verse in the same old, endlessly repeating song. The universe, he has learned, has a very limited imagination, and he, the eternal audience, is so very, very tired of the show. In a way, her prison is not so different from his own. He lifts a single clawed finger and gives a slight, dismissive wave of his hand. It is a gesture that says, "You are dismissed. I have heard what I need to hear. The meeting is over." The guards understand the signal. They take the old crone by the arms and begin to lead her away.
her chains clinking and scraping on the floor as she shuffles back towards the darkness from whence she came. The weekly prophecy is complete. The box on his mental checklist has been ticked. With the matter of the unsolicited prophecy duly noted and filed away in the vast, dusty archive of his mind, the Demon King rises once more from his obsidian throne. The formal audiences of the morning are concluded. It is now time for his daily inspection tour, a slow and solitary walk through the industrial heart of his kingdom, the Great Forges. He descends from the throne room, taking a different set of spiraling stairs that lead down, ever down, into the deep geothermal core of the mountain upon which his fortress is built. As he descends, the cold, silent, and sterile atmosphere of the upper levels begins to change. The air grows warmer, then hot. The profound silence is gradually replaced by a low, distant rhythmic thrum, a sound that grows steadily louder, a great industrial heartbeat that pulses up from the depths. The air begins to thicken, losing its clean, stony scent and taking on the sharp, acrid tang of sulfur, the metallic smell of hot iron, and the dry, fiery scent of burning coal. He arrives at the entrance to the forges, a massive archway of unadorned, heat-scorched rock, and steps through into a cavern of fire and industry. The sheer scale of the place is, like everything in his domain, overwhelming. It is a vast natural cavern, miles wide, illuminated not by captured starlight, but by the fierce, angry orange glow of 1,000 roaring furnaces, and rivers of molten metal that flow in channels carved into the cavern floor. The heat is immense, a dry, oppressive wave that would incinerate any mortal being in an instant. But for him, it is merely a comfortable warmth, a reminder of the raw, elemental power that slumbers at the heart of his world. And the sound is a deafening, hypnotic symphony of creation. It is the deep, roaring breath of 100 giant bellows, each one the size of a mortal house, pumping air into the furnaces. It is the rhythmic, percussive clang, clang, clang of 1,000 massive hammers striking glowing metal on anvils of solid meteorite. It is the sharp, violent hiss of white-hot steel being plunged into great, dark, oily troughs of black, oily water, sending up vast clouds of steam that momentarily obscure the fiery landscape. It is the sound of industry on a geological scale. The workers of these forges are not the small, nervous imps of the upper levels. They are the fire giants, the demon smiths, a race of powerful, brutish creatures whose skin is the color of cooling lava and whose muscles are like cords of twisted iron. They move through the fiery haze with a slow, powerful, and unending rhythm. They are not working in a frantic, chaotic frenzy. There is no shouting, no wasted motion. Each smith works with a focused, meditative grace, his movements economical and precise. They are engaged in a form of industrial ballet, a timeless choreography of hammer and flame. The Demon King begins his slow walk through this infernal workshop. He does not speak to the smiths. He does not need to. His presence is enough. They are aware of him, but they do not stop their work. They simply continue their rhythmic toil, their movements perhaps a fraction more precise. a fraction more powerful, under the silent, watchful gaze of their lord. He walks along the great, flowing rivers of molten iron, the intense light of the liquid metal reflecting off his black, soul-forged armor. He watches as a team of smiths uses massive, long-handled ladles to pour the glowing liquid into great stone molds. He watches as another smith pulls a white-hot sword blade from a furnace, its edges shimmering with heat, and lays it upon an anvil. He watches the hammer rise and fall, each strike sending a shower of bright orange sparks into the air, each impact shaping the raw, formless metal into a thing of deadly, terrible beauty. He walks past great piles of finished goods stacked like cordwood in the cavernous space. There are mountains of black, jagged spear tips. There are racks holding thousands of identical, wickedly barbed swords. There are suits of heavy, spiked armor, enough to outfit an army that could conquer a continent. And this is the great, quaint, and deeply strange truth of the great forges. All of this creation is without purpose. They are not forging these weapons for an impending war. There is no great enemy to arm against, no mortal kingdom he has any interest in conquering. They are simply forging. It is what they do. It is what they have always done. The smiths rise, they work, they rest, and they rise again. Their entire existence defined by the rhythmic clang of their hammers and the heat of the furnace. They create swords that will never be wielded, armor that will never be worn, spear tips that will never taste blood. It is industry as a form of eternal, pointless ritual. The Demon King understands this. He is the one who decreed it eons ago. He realized that a being of immense power and violent tendencies, like a demonsmith, needs an outlet. They need a purpose, a task to focus their energy. And so he gave them this, the endless, meditative, and ultimately meaningless task of creation. The forges serve not as an armory, but as a form of occupational therapy on a massive scale. It keeps the smiths occupied, it keeps them productive, and it keeps their immense destructive potential safely channeled into a process that has no end and no ultimate goal. It is a perfect, self-sustaining system of pointless endeavor. He reaches the far end of the great cavern and stands for a moment, looking back over the fiery, industrial landscape. He sees the slow, powerful, and unending rhythm of his workers, 1,000 beings engaged in a great, cosmic act of creation that serves no purpose other than to keep them from falling into the chaos and despair that would come from idleness. He feels a faint sense of satisfaction. It is not the pride of a general reviewing his troops, but the quiet satisfaction of an engineer observing a complex machine that is running smoothly and according to its design. The system is stable. The workers are occupied. The pointless ritual continues. And in his cold, orderly, and deeply pragmatic kingdom, that is a kind of success. With a final, lingering look at the hypnotic dance of hammer and flame, he turns away from the roaring heart of his fortress and begins his slow ascent back towards the cold, silent, and administrative levels of his domain. The inspection is complete, and the quiet, weary business of his eternal day continues. After the heat and the rhythmic, chaotic noise of the forges, the Demon King retreats to a different kind of chamber, one where the only heat is the low, simmering burn of ancient rivalries, and the only sound is the quiet, measured cadence of strategic discourse. This is the War Council Chamber, a room where the fate of realms is decided, not with the clang of swords, but with the quiet shifting of markers on a map. The room is circular, austere, and windowless. The walls are made of a dark, non-reflective stone that seems to absorb all sound, creating a close, confidential atmosphere. In the center of the room is a single, massive circular table, carved from the fossilized heart of a long-dead Leviathan. The table is smooth and black, and its surface is not empty. Upon it lies the map. This is not a map of parchment and ink. It is a living, magical, three-dimensional representation of his kingdom and the neighboring dark realms. Tiny, jagged mountain ranges of obsidian rise from its surface. Rivers of what looks like real, slowly flowing magma snake their way through dark valleys. The territories of his various vassals are marked out in shifting, shimmering fields of colored light. The deep, bruised purple of the shadow fens, the angry volcanic red of the ash wastes, the sickly phosphorescent green of the swamps of sorrow. It is a masterpiece of cartography and enchantment, a real-time geopolitical chessboard. Seated around this table are his highest generals and lieutenants, the key players in the great, slow game of infernal politics. There is Lord Malachor, a hulking four-armed demon of pure, brutish strength, the commander of his legions, his face a roadmap of ancient battle scars. There is Lady Vexia, a lithe, serpentine creature, with eyes that glitter with a cold reptilian intelligence, his chief spymaster and diplomat. And there is Grand Vizier Morgraf, a stooped, ancient being whose face is entirely hidden by the shadows of a deep cowl, the master of his realm's arcane and logistical concerns. The Demon King takes his seat at the head of the table, his obsidian throne, the only chair with a high back. The others give a slight, respectful inclination of their heads. The meeting begins without preamble. Lord Malachor is the first to speak, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. But he does not speak of glorious invasions or the conquest of mortal worlds. He speaks with a tone of weary frustration, of a series of minor border skirmishes with the Goblin King of the Underfishers. "My lord," he rumbles, gesturing with one of his four massive hands towards a flickering, contested border on the map. The goblin raiding parties have become more brazen. They struck a sulfur caravan near the Black Gap again last week. We lost 3 guards and a significant portion of the shipment. My patrols are stretched thin. I request permission to launch a punitive expedition, to burn a few of their outlying warrens and remind them of their place.
The Demon King listens, his gaze fixed on the flickering border. A younger, more impetuous ruler might have granted the request, eager for a display of strength. But he knows that a full-scale war with the Goblin King would be a messy, protracted, and ultimately unprofitable affair. The goblins are numerous, their tunnels are a labyrinth, and they have nothing of value to plunder. He turns his gaze to Lady Vexia. "Your assessment?" he asks, his voice a quiet command. Vexia leans forward, her serpentine grace a stark contrast to Malicor's brutish power. "A punitive expedition would be inadvisable at this time, my lord," she hisses, her voice smooth and persuasive. "My agents report that the Goblin King is currently negotiating a new weapons contract with the Durgar of the Iron Deeps. An open conflict would likely accelerate that alliance and bog down Lord Malicor's legions in a costly guerrilla war. I would suggest a more subtle approach." She taps a slender clawed finger on a different part of the map. "The Goblin King's third son, Prince Grolnok, is ambitious and notoriously resentful of his father. A small, untraceable poison, perhaps, or a well-placed rumor about his loyalty. It could create a succession crisis that would keep the goblins busy with their own internal squabbles for a generation. The Demon King considers this. It is a slow, careful, and deeply cynical game of politics. It is not about honor or glory. It is about stability and the efficient management of resources." He gives a single, slow nod. "Proceed, Lady Vexia," he rumbles. "Keep the cost of the operation under 1,000 souls." The discussion moves on. Grand Vizier Morgrath brings up the next item on the agenda: trade negotiations with the Spider Queen of the Drow. "My lord," he rasps from within his cowl, "the matriarch demands a 30% increase in our payment of captured screams for her shadow silk shipments. She cites increased production costs and market volatility." Lord Malicor snorts in derision. 30%? The old spider is robbing us blind. We should just take the silk. Vexia shakes her head. "And risk a trade war that would cut off our supply of the only material that can be used to weave the cloaks for my assassins? Unwise. Her silk gives us a significant tactical advantage in the mortal realms." For the next hour, they debate the matter with the passionless pragmatism of a corporate board meeting. They discuss tariffs, trade imbalances, and the possibility of sourcing a lower quality but more affordable silk from the silkworms of purgatory. It is war and strategy discussed as tedious diplomacy, a conversation of cosmic stakes conducted with the dry, tactical language of a business negotiation. Finally, the Demon King makes his ruling. They will meet the Queen's demands, but they will also quietly fund a rival drow house, creating internal competition that will, in the long run, drive the price of her silk back down. It is a discussion about mitigation and containment. They talk about relocating border outposts, about setting up magical wards to shield the main territories, and about the potential for harvesting the mutated creatures for use in alchemical experiments. They are not heroes fighting against a great evil.
They are pragmatic administrators dealing with a slow-moving environmental disaster. The meeting concludes as it began, with a series of quiet, calculated decisions. No armies will march. No cities will be burned. The great, slow, and deeply cynical game of infernal geopolitics will continue, played not with swords, but with poison, propaganda, and economic policy. The Demon King sits back in his throne, his generals and lieutenants waiting for their dismissal. He has once again navigated the complex, treacherous waters of interdimensional relations. He has managed his rivals, secured his resources, and maintained the delicate, brutal balance of power that keeps his kingdom stable. It is a game with no end, a war with no final victory, only a series of small, temporary advantages in an eternal, cold conflict. And like all his other duties, it is a necessary and deeply, deeply wearying part of his eternal day. The final topic is the slow, inexorable, magical decay of the blighted lands, a vast, corrupted forest on the edge of his domain. The arcane radiation emanating from the forest is beginning to mutate the local wildlife and interfere with scrying spells. Morgoth presents a detailed report, complete with charts and projections, outlining the slow, creeping progress of the decay. The discussion that follows is not about how to stop it, for they all know that is impossible. It is a long-term investment in market manipulation. With the tedious diplomacy of the War Council concluded, and his generals dismissed to carry out their quiet, cynical machinations, the Demon King is once again left alone. The day's schedule has been fulfilled. The machinery of his kingdom has been wound and set for another cycle. Now, in the long, quiet hours of his afternoon, he permits himself his only true personal indulgence, his sole form of private entertainment. He walks from the War Council chamber to yet another part of his vast, silent fortress, a place that no one else is ever permitted to enter. This is the Hall of Echoes. It is a long, narrow gallery, its walls and ceiling made of a strange, milky white crystal that seems to emit a soft, pearlescent internal light. The air here is still and cool, and it carries no scent at all. The hall is not empty. Floating in the air, suspended at various heights like strange ethereal bubbles, are hundreds of crystalline spheres, each one about the size of a human head. They drift slowly, aimlessly, occasionally bumping into each other with a soft, melodic chime, the only sound in the otherwise silent hall. Each of these spheres is a captured memory. They are the moments he has deemed worthy of preservation from his impossibly long life. Moments that he has plucked from the stream of time and encased in crystal for his own private viewing. This hall is his personal library, his photo album, his cinema. It is a museum of things that are gone forever. He walks slowly down the center of the hall, the floating spheres drifting gently around him, their soft light illuminating his dark, armored form. He raises a hand, his clawed fingers gently brushing against a passing sphere. As he does, a faint, ghostly image flickers within it, the face of a beautiful, laughing elven queen, her eyes full of a life and light that was extinguished 60,000 years ago. He lets it drift past. He touches another. This one shows a vast, empty desert of red sand under a sky with two suns. This is a world before life had even begun to take hold, a place of stark, primordial beauty. He has watched it for millennia as it slowly cooled and changed, but he has not visited it in an age. He continues his slow, contemplative walk, surrounded by the ghosts of his own past. He is not searching for a memory of a great victory or a moment of triumphant power. Such memories hold no interest for him. He is searching for something quieter, something more profound. Finally, he finds the one he is looking for. It is a simple, unassuming sphere, floating in a dark corner of the hall. He reaches out and takes it gently in his massive, gauntleted hands. The crystal is cool and smooth to the touch. He brings it closer to his face, his ancient, obsidian eyes gazing into its depths. He closes his eyes, and he allows the memory to flood his consciousness. He is no longer in the Hall of Echoes. He is standing on a balcony made of pure solidified light, overlooking a city of impossible crystalline towers. The sky above is a swirl of purple and gold, and the air is filled with a soft, chiming music that is the sound of a billion sentient crystals thinking in harmony. He is not in his armored, monstrous form. He is in an older, more ethereal shape, a form made of shadow and starlight. And he is not alone. Standing beside him is another being, a creature of immense grace and power. It is Cygnus, the last of the star gods, a being whose flesh was woven from the fabric of a dying nebula, and whose voice was the sound of creation itself. The memory is of a conversation, one that took place before the mortal races had even crawled out of their primordial slime. He and Cygnus are discussing the nature of existence, the great cosmic dance of creation and entropy. Cygnus is arguing with a passionate, booming voice that makes the crystalline towers vibrate, that creation is the ultimate purpose of the universe. He speaks of the beauty of life, of the joy of making something new, of the infinite, glorious potential of a universe that is constantly unfolding. The Demon King, even in his own memory, remains silent for a long time. And then he speaks. His voice, then, as now, a low, quiet rumble. He argues for the other side. He speaks of the elegance of entropy, of the peace of non-existence, of the perfect, quiet stability of a universe that has finally run down. He argues that all creation is merely a prelude to its own inevitable decay, that all life is just a brief, chaotic, and ultimately pointless flash of light before the eternal, peaceful darkness. Theirs is not an argument born of anger or enmity. It is a philosophical debate between two ancient, powerful beings who hold opposing but equally valid views of the universe. It is a conversation between two equals, two friends who enjoy the simple pleasure of a good, rigorous intellectual discussion. The memory is so vivid, he can almost feel the strange, vibrating warmth of the crystalline balcony beneath his feet, can almost smell the faint, ozone-like scent of the star god's presence. He savors the memory of Cygnus's passionate, booming laughter, a sound that could shake galaxies. He remembers the feeling of being in the presence of someone who was his peer, someone who understood the vast cosmic scale of his thoughts, someone with whom he did not have to be a king or a conqueror, but could simply be himself. The memory fades, the crystalline towers dissolving, the sound of Cygnus's laughter echoing into silence. He is once more in the Hall of Echoes, holding the cool, crystalline sphere in his hands. His expression is, as always, unreadable, a mask of cold, eternal calm. But deep within the ancient, weary core of his being, he feels a faint, familiar ache. It is the closest a being like him can come to nostalgia, to regret. Cygnus is gone. The star gods, with their passionate, creative fire, burned too brightly and faded an eon ago. The beautiful crystalline race is gone, their city's dust, their song silenced. He is the only one left who even remembers that this conversation ever took place. This is his only form of true entertainment, this quiet, solitary audience with his own memories. But every memory is a double-edged sword. It is a comfort, a reminder of a time when he was not so utterly alone. But it is also a quiet torment, a fresh reminder of everything and everyone he has outlasted. He is the sole survivor of his own history, a lonely king ruling over a kingdom of ghosts. He gently releases the sphere, and it floats away to rejoin the silent, drifting dance of the others. He has had his indulgence. He has revisited a time when the universe felt a little less empty. But the moment is over. The past is the past, and the long, quiet, and unchanging present still awaits. With a final lingering look at the floating memories, he turns and walks slowly out of the hall, the soft, melodic chimes of the spheres, the only sound to mark his passing, a quiet, lonely farewell from the ghosts he keeps in jars.
The Demon King has returned to his private chambers. The long, wearying cycle of the day is almost at its end. He has conducted his audiences, reviewed his accounts, contemplated the endless futility of the cosmos, inspected his forges, and navigated the treacherous currents of infernal politics. He has even permitted himself a brief, melancholic journey into the past. Now, all that remains is the final, quiet act that will close the day's business. He stands not in his throne room, but in a smaller, more private study adjacent to his sleeping chamber. The room is as stark and unadorned as the rest of his fortress, containing only a massive desk carved from a single block of obsidian and a simple, severe chair. He stands behind the desk, a towering, silent figure in the gloom, his armored form absorbing the faint ambient light. A soft, shuffling sound announces the arrival of a servant. It is Ignatius, the ancient, spectacled imp,
the royal actuary returning for his final duty of the day. He does not carry the great ledger this time. He carries a single, small scroll of dark, brittle-looking parchment tied with a simple black ribbon. He approaches the desk, bows so low that his long, pointed nose nearly touches the polished stone. He then places the scroll carefully upon its surface. He then retreats backwards into the shadows, his presence dissolving as silently as it appeared. The Demon King looks down at the scroll. This is the evening's final decree, the last piece of paperwork that requires his personal attention before he can retire. It is a summary of all the minor, day-to-day administrative requests that are too insignificant for a formal audience, but which still require the seal of the highest authority. He reaches out a single gauntleted hand, and with a delicate, almost surgical precision, he unties the black ribbon. The scroll unfurls with a soft, dry, crackling sound. The text is written in the same neat, spidery script as the soul accounts. He begins to read, his ancient eyes scanning the document with an effortless, practiced speed. The requests are, as always, deeply and profoundly mundane. The first item is a requisition for a new batch of chains for the pits of despair, as the old ones are showing signs of metaphysical corrosion. The second is a request to slightly increase the ambient temperature in the swamps of eternal melancholy to encourage the growth of a particularly potent strain of soul-rot fungus. The third is a proposal to rename a minor tributary of the River of Woe to the Creek of Mild Disappointment, to more accurately reflect the level of torment experienced by the souls consigned to it. He reads through these items, his expression unchanging. These are the small, grinding gears of his vast infernal machine, the tiny, necessary adjustments that keep the entire system running smoothly. He gives a faint, almost imperceptible nod of approval for each one. Then he comes to the final item on the scroll. It is a simple, two-sentence request from the Department of Soul Flow Hydraulics. It is a proposal to permanently divert the course of a small, insignificant river of souls known as the Weeping Stream, away from the plains of apathy and into the great central reservoir that feeds the forges of regret. The stated reason is purely logistical. The forges are running at a slight regret deficit, and this small, simple infrastructural project will correct the imbalance and increase their efficiency by an estimated 0.5%. This is the final decree of the day. A minor infrastructural project, a simple matter of rerouting resource to improve efficiency. He picks up a stylus that rests on his desk, a long, sharp shard of obsidian. He dips the tip into a small well of his own blood, the ink of all official documents. And then, with a single, slow, deliberate, and utterly emotionless stroke of his claw, he signs his name at the bottom of the scroll. It is a simple, quiet act performed in the solitude of his private study. There is no thunderous declaration, no dramatic pronouncement of doom. There is only the soft, wet scratch of the stylus on the parchment.
The camera, in a metaphorical sense, would follow the ink as it soaks into the dry, brittle fibers of the scroll. It would watch the complex, ancient rune of his name sizzle for a moment before drying to a dark, permanent stain. And then, with the simple, quiet, and deeply boring act of signing a piece of paperwork, a decision of immense and terrible consequence has been made. That single, effortless stroke of his claw has just altered the eternal fate of millions of souls. The beings who were destined for a quiet, gray eternity of listless apathy in the plains will now be diverted to the forges of regret, where their essence will be used to fuel the creation of chains and instruments of a more active, fiery torment. Their afterlives have been irrevocably changed, their eternal sentence amended by a quiet administrative decision made to address a minor statistical imbalance. They will never know why. They will never know that their fate was sealed not by a grand moral judgment, but by a simple logistical calculation. This is the true nature of his power. It is not in the roar of his legions or the swing of his sword. Such things are crude, noisy, and inefficient. His true, absolute, and most terrifying power lies in this stillness. It lies in the quiet, effortless, and final authority of his signature. It is the power to reshape reality, to rewrite destinies, to condemn millions, not with a burst of rage, but with the quiet, dispassionate stroke of a pen. It is the ultimate power of the bureaucrat, the administrator, the king who has become so intertwined with the system he created that his will is now just another part of its inexorable grinding process. He has become a law of nature in his own kingdom, as impersonal and as absolute as gravity. He places the stylus back in its holder. The final decree is signed. The day's work is, at last, truly done. He looks at the scroll for a moment longer, at the dark, dried stain of his name, the quiet, unassuming symbol of his immense and wearying power. He feels no satisfaction, no pride, no guilt. He feels nothing at all. It was simply the last item on his list. And now, with the final piece of paperwork for the day completed, he is free to retire. He turns away from the desk, leaving the signed scroll to be collected by the silent, ever-present attendants, and walks towards the adjoining chamber of slumber, ready for the brief, dreamless oblivion that will serve as his only reward. Let us return for a moment to the great throne room. The final petitioner has spoken. His mundane request for a slight adjustment in the torment schedule of the Whispering Peaks, duly noted and filed away in the Demon King's vast administrative mind. The long, slow, and deeply tedious procession of the morning's audiences is, at last, at an end. A profound, expectant silence falls over the vast, crystalline chamber. The 24 figures, the demonic lords, the provincial governors, the high-ranking prelates, all stand perfectly still in their neat, orderly queue. They have received their rulings, their assignments, their rebukes. Their business with the throne is concluded, but they do not leave. They wait. They wait for the signal of dismissal,
a permission they must be granted before they can retreat from the overwhelming presence of their lord. The demon king sits upon his obsidian throne, a great, dark, unmoving monolith. His ancient black eyes sweep across the assembled court, his gaze lingering for a fraction of a second on each figure. It is not a look of anger or of approval. It is a simple, silent act of accounting, a final inventory of the key components of his infernal administration. He sees Lord Malachor, the brutish warrior, his 4 arms crossed over his massive chest, his mind already formulating battle plans for a punitive expedition that will never happen. He sees Lady Vexia, the serpentine spymaster, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on her thin lips as she contemplates the subtle political poison she is about to unleash upon the Goblin Court. He sees the prelate of the 7th Circle, his shadowy form vibrating with a quiet, anxious energy as he mentally drafts the budget proposal for the new soul-sorting rune. He sees them all, his powerful, ambitious, and deeply terrified underlings, each one a sharp and dangerous tool that he must wield with care and precision. The silence stretches, becoming heavy, almost viscous. The court waits, motionless, their breath held. Then the Demon King performs the final act of the morning's court session. He gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. It is a gesture so slight, so minimal, that a mortal observer would miss it entirely. It is a tiny, downward movement of his massive head, a motion of perhaps a single inch. But in the silent, supercharged atmosphere of the throne room, this gesture is as loud and as final as the cracking of a world. It is the signal. It is the dismissal. The reaction from the court is immediate and perfectly synchronized. As one, the 24 figures bow low, a deep, reverential gesture of submission and fealty. They do not turn their backs to the throne. Such an act would be an unthinkable breach of protocol. Instead, they begin to retreat, moving backwards, their steps silent on the polished obsidian floor. And as they retreat into the shadows that pool at the edges of the vast chamber, a strange and unsettling transformation occurs. Their forms begin to lose their solidity. They do not simply walk into the darkness. They are reclaimed by it. Lord Malachor's brutish physical form seems to unravel, his armored plates dissolving into smoke and embers. Lady Vexia's serpentine body becomes a sinuous, twisting ribbon of pure shadow before dissipating completely. The prelate's wavering, indistinct form simply thins out, like a puff of smoke caught in a gentle breeze, until it is nothing at all. One by one, they dissolve, their powerful, individual presences absorbed back into the great, silent, and undifferentiated darkness of the fortress. The process is silent, efficient, and deeply unnerving. It is as if the court was never truly there at all, but was merely a temporary manifestation, a collection of ghosts and echoes given form for a few hours to conduct their business, and who now return to the void from which they came.
In a matter of moments, the vast throne room, which had been, by the standards of this silent kingdom, a bustling hub of activity, is once again utterly empty. The king is alone. He remains on his throne for a long, uncounted moment, the sole occupant of the immense silent space. The transition is stark and profound. Just a moment ago, he was the center of a complex web of power, a king presiding over his court, a manager directing his subordinates. Now he is simply a being, alone in a very large, very empty room. The silence that rushes in to fill the void left by the retreating shadows is a different kind of silence than the one that preceded it. It is not the tense, expectant silence of a court waiting for a ruling. It is a deep, absolute, and cosmic silence. The silence of a dead star. The silence of an empty universe. He sits, unmoving, his obsidian eyes gazing out at the vast emptiness before him. He is the master of all he surveys, and all he surveys is a vast and beautifully crafted monument to his own solitude. In this moment, the true nature of his kingship is laid bare. He is not a ruler of a people. He is the custodian of a system. He is not the leader of a nation. He is the central processing unit of a vast infernal machine. His lords and governors are not his subjects. They are his subroutines, his peripheral devices, his tools. And now that their function for the day is complete, they have been powered down, returned to standby mode, leaving him, the central core, to bear the weight of his own eternal, solitary consciousness. There is a profound, almost tragic irony in his situation. He is surrounded by the mechanisms of immense power, the armies, the spies, the bureaucrats. But he is utterly, completely, and eternally alone. He has no peers, no confidants, no one with whom to share the immense, crushing burden of his own existence. The dismissal of the court is not just the end of a meeting. It is the end of his only scheduled social interaction for the day. For those few hours, he was engaged. He was performing a function. He was playing the part of the king. Now the performance is over. The audience has vanished, and he is left alone on the stage. The echoes of the play, the only company he has. He continues to sit, a silent, dark statue on a silent, dark throne, a being of unimaginable power, adrift in an ocean of unimaginable loneliness. The vast, empty throne room is a perfect metaphor for his own soul, a place of immense scale, cold grandeur, and absolute, unending solitude. And the long, quiet, empty hours of the afternoon stretch out before him, a desolate landscape he must traverse alone. After a long, uncounted moment of sitting in the profound and absolute silence of his empty throne room, the demon king finally rises. The day's public and administrative duties are well and truly over. There are no more petitions to hear, no more accounts to review, no more prophecies to endure. All that is left is the long, quiet journey back to his private chambers, a retreat
through a kingdom that has now fallen into its afternoon stillness. He descends the steps of the dais, his armored boots making no sound on the polished basalt, and begins to retrace the long path he took that morning. The fortress that had been, in its own quiet and orderly way, a place of business, is now a place at rest. The change is subtle, but to his ancient and finely tuned senses, it is as dramatic as the changing of a season. He walks back through the great cyclopean corridors, and the oppressive silence feels different now. It is no longer the tense, respectful silence of a court, or the purposeful, industrial silence of his private study. It is the deep, slumbering silence of a house whose occupants have all gone away. It is the silence of an empty home. He passes the entrance to the great forges. The deafening rhythmic symphony of hammer and flame is gone. The fires have been banked, the bellows are still, and the rivers of molten metal have cooled to a dull black crust. The demon smiths have retired to their own deep, stony chambers to rest and recuperate. Their endless, pointless labor paused for a few hours. The only sound from the vast, dark cavern is a faint, almost inaudible hissing, the sound of 1,000,000 tons of hot metal slowly, patiently releasing its heat into the cool air. The heart of his kingdom has stopped beating for the day, and its absence leaves a profound void. He continues his solitary journey, a single, dark, moving figure in a world of static architectural grandeur. His ancient eyes, which have witnessed the explosive death of galaxies, are now attuned to the smallest, most insignificant of details. He is not lost in thought or memory. He is simply observing. His gaze falls upon a massive flagstone in the floor, one that he has walked over 1,000,000 times before. He notices a new crack near its edge, a hairline fracture, infinitesimally small. To a mortal eye, it would be invisible, but to him, it is a significant event. He knows this particular stone was laid down 2.5 million years ago, and he can feel, with a strange geological empathy, the immense, slow, internal stress that has finally caused it to yield. It is a change, and in a place defined by its unchanging permanence, any change, no matter how small, is noteworthy. It is a quiet reminder that even here, in the heart of his timeless kingdom, entropy is still at work, grinding away with an infinite, patient slowness. He watches a single speck of dust illuminated by the faint, pearlescent light of a distant magical lamp as it floats and tumbles through the still air. He follows its lazy, chaotic journey, his mind idly calculating the complex air currents that guide its path. He sees the dust mote not as a piece of dirt, but as a tiny world, a microcosm of the universe, subject to the same great, impersonal laws of physics that govern the swirling of nebulae and the orbits of planets. It is a moment of pure, detached scientific observation, a quiet intellectual exercise to pass the long, empty moments of his walk. He passes the Hall of History, its shimmering cosmic tapestries now seeming to hold a deeper, more profound melancholy in the afternoon stillness. He looks at the image of the dying crystalline race and feels a faint, ghostly echo of the sad, chiming music they once made, a song that now exists only in his memory. He is the only one who can still hear it. The silence of the hall feels less like peace and more like the quiet of a graveyard. This journey back through his own home is a slow, meditative process, but it does not bring him a sense of peace or contentment. The feeling that settles upon him is one of profound, cosmic emptiness. His kingdom is vast. His power is absolute. His fortress is an unassailable marvel of engineering and magic. But his home is an empty one. It is a house with 1 billion rooms, and he is its only true occupant. The legions of demons, the court of lords, the armies of smiths, they are not his family or his companions. They are his staff. They are the functionaries, the employees, the living components of the great complex machine that he has built around himself. And now that the workday is over, the staff have all gone home, leaving the master to wander alone through the vast, silent, and impeccably maintained halls of his own magnificent prison. He feels the truth of his existence with a clarity that is almost physical. He has traded companionship for control, warmth for order, life for permanence. He has achieved absolute power, and the price has been absolute solitude. He has built a kingdom so perfectly ordered, so ruthlessly efficient, and so utterly dedicated to his will that there is no room left in it for anything as messy, as chaotic, or as unpredictable as a genuine connection. He reaches the door to his private chambers, the same dark, unmarked door that he left that morning. He pauses for a moment before entering, his hand resting on the cold, smooth stone. He looks back down the long, empty corridor, a perfect, silent, geometric vista of stone and shadow. This is his creation. This is his legacy, a perfect, silent, and utterly empty house. It is the ultimate monument to a being who has outlasted everything, including his own reasons for existing. With a final lingering look at the desolate beauty of his domain, he pushes the door open and steps into the familiar darkness of his own private chambers, the silence of the fortress following him in and settling around him like a shroud. The long walk back is over, and the long, quiet, empty evening has just begun. He stands for a long moment in the center of his private chamber, the absolute silence of the fortress pressing in on him. The day, with its endless cycle of duties and its profound underlying weariness, is finally at its end. All that remains is the final ritual, the gentle unwinding of the day, the slow return to the quiet stillness from which he emerged. As if summoned by his unspoken intent, the silent attendants once again coalesce from the deepest shadows of the room. The small, terrified imps and the spectral, smoky wraiths reappear, their movements as silent and as precise as ever. They approach their Lord not with the morning's air of solemn preparation, but with a sense of gentle final closure. The ritual of disarming begins. It is the morning ceremony performed in reverse, a slow, meditative process of unburdening. The first piece to be removed is the crown. The ancient, wizened imp approaches, his hands still trembling slightly, and with infinite care he lifts the twisted iron circlet from the demon's brow. The moment the cold metal breaks contact, the constant psychic hum of his kingdom vanishes. The million whispering voices, the pleas, the curses, the endless chattering static of his domain fall silent. The sudden quiet in his mind is vast, profound, and exquisitely relieving. It is like the feeling of stepping out of a deafeningly loud factory and into a silent, snow-covered field. It is a peace he is only granted for these few precious hours of the night. Next, the attendants begin to unlatch the plates of his ceremonial armor. Working in perfect, silent unison, they remove the pieces one by one: the gorget, the vambraces, the greaves. The only sound is the soft, metallic click of the ancient buckles being undone. With each piece that is removed, a fraction of the day's immense weight seems to lift from his shoulders. He can feel the strange, freeing lightness as the heavy, soul-forged plates are taken away and returned to their hidden alcoves in the wall. This is not just a physical unburdening, it is a shedding of responsibility. The armor is the cage of his authority, and as it is dismantled, he is slowly, piece by piece, being freed from his role as the Demon King and allowed, for a short while, to simply be. Finally, they lift the great, heavy mantle of woven shadow stuff from his shoulders. The cold, heavy fabric, which has been a constant presence all day, is taken away, and he feels a sense of release so profound it is almost dizzying. The ritual is complete. He is unburdened, standing in the center of his chamber in a simple, unadorned tunic of dark cloth. He is no longer an icon, an institution, a symbol of dread. He is just a being, ancient and weary, at the end of a long and tedious day. He gives a single, almost imperceptible nod of dismissal, and the attendants, their final duty performed, dissolve back into the shadows, leaving him once more in absolute solitude. Unburdened, he walks to the far wall of his chamber. This wall is not made of the same black, light-absorbing stone as the rest of the fortress. It is a single, immense, flawless sheet of crystal, a vast window looking out into the void. He stands before it, a lone, dark figure, and gazes out at his kingdom. The view is not one of a fiery, tormented hellscape. There are no rivers of lava, no plains of screaming souls. The landscape that stretches out before him is one of profound, desolate beauty. He sees a silent, dark world of jagged volcanic peaks, their sharp obsidian summits scraping against a sky that is not black, but a deep, swirling tapestry of cosmic nebula. Great, silent clouds of purple, blue, and gold drift slowly through the void, illuminated by the cold, distant light of dying stars. It is a landscape of immense scale, of deep time, of a beauty that is cold, majestic, and utterly alien. There is no life here, no movement save for the slow, cosmic dance of the celestial dust clouds. It is a world of perfect, eternal stillness, and it is entirely his. He stands there for a long, uncounted time, simply watching the slow, silent ballet of the nebula. He feels no pride of ownership, no joy in the beauty before him. He feels only a deep, quiet, and resonant connection to the landscape. He is as old as these mountains, as silent as this sky, as empty as this void. The view is not a possession, it is a mirror. It is a reflection of his own ancient, lonely, and desolate soul. Finally, with a weariness that seems to emanate from the very core of his being, he turns away from the window and walks towards the great, black obsidian slab that is his bed. His day is done. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to think, nothing left to feel. He does not fall asleep in the mortal sense. He does not succumb to a gentle drowsiness. The process is far more deliberate. He lies down upon the cold, smooth stone, his ancient body finding its familiar position. He places his hands at his sides, his form as still and as composed as a king in his sarcophagus. And then he simply lets go. He closes his ancient obsidian eyes, and he allows his consciousness, that vast, heavy, and impossibly old thing, to dissolve. It does not drift away. It unravels. It dissipates. It recedes from the shores of being and flows back into the deep, quiet, and dreamless ocean of non-existence from which it emerged that morning. It is a complete and total cessation of being, a brief, blessed respite from the endless, grinding duty of existence. For a few short, unmeasured hours, he is not a king, not a god, not a demon. He is nothing. And in that perfect, silent nothingness, he is finally, truly at peace. The final shot is of the silent, dark chamber. The only movement is the slow, silent swirling of the distant nebula visible through the great crystal window. The only sound is the faint, deep, subsonic hum of the mountain's core, the fortress's eternal, sleeping heartbeat. The camera holds on this image of perfect, absolute stillness for a long, contemplative moment, before finally, slowly fading to black. The cycle is complete, and the silence that follows is absolute.